I stood quietly at the bottom of the stairs, just behind the kitchen wall, when I heard her say it. She's just a bitter old shrew with a bald spot. Honestly, I can't believe she still thinks she has any say in this house. She was laughing. With her friends. In the very home I had signed over to them. That was the moment I realized I had given too much, and it was time to take it back. My name is Estella Navarro, and I've lived a long, full life. Some of it beautiful, most of it hard-earned. I'm 72 years old now, and if you looked at me, you might just see an old woman with thinning hair and weary hands. But behind these tired eyes is a heart that once beat wildly for love, worked endlessly for family, and broke quietly under the weight of betrayal. I suppose it began long before that afternoon behind the kitchen wall. Looking back, the signs were always there. Small cracks, like in the porcelain teacup I used every morning. Hairline fractures I chose to ignore, until one day the handle broke clean off in my hand. That's what betrayal is like. Quiet at first until suddenly it cuts you. I gave my son Andres and his wife Camila everything. When my husband Emilio passed, the life insurance money didn't amount to much, but I'd been smart. Careful. I invested what I could, lived modestly, and built a small but solid savings. Enough to make sure Andres would never struggle the way we did. When Andres married Camila, I welcomed her with arms wide open and a heart already softened with hope. She was young, charming, always put together. Too put together now that I think about it. She smiled like she practiced in the mirror. Her hugs were always just 1 second too late. But I told myself she was adjusting, nervous, trying to find her place in our little family. I gave them the house. Yes, the house. Not just any house. My house. The one Emilio and I built from scratch over 30 years. The same house where I taught Andres to ride a bike in the driveway. Where I cried in the pantry after Emilio's funeral because I didn't want Andres to see me fall apart. That house. I signed it over to them as a gift. No strings. I thought it was love. I thought it was legacy. But love doesn't whisper behind your back. And legacy doesn't leave you outside your own door. It started small. They forgot to invite me to dinner with their friends. Then Camila began making comments about boundaries and how she needed more space to breathe. I quietly moved into the guest room downstairs, telling them my knees hurt too much to go up and down the stairs. The truth? I felt like an intruder in the home I'd paid for. Andres changed too. My sweet boy who used to call me Mamita and rub my shoulders while I watched my novellas. Now he barely made eye contact. Always on his phone. Always busy. Camila would say things like, "He works hard, Estella, you should be proud," as if I hadn't raised him to work hard. As if I hadn't worked 3 jobs at one point just to keep food on the table. But I kept quiet. Until that day. It was a Saturday. I remember because I was baking pan de lote, the way I used to on special occasions. Camila had guests over, her 2 girlfriends, the ones with perfect nails and those eyes that scan a room like they own it. I went upstairs to get my knitting, and as I came back down, I heard them talking. My name in that tone. She's so clingy. Like, she just sits there watching us, like a sad little ghost. She doesn't even wear a wig. Just bald up top. I die. And then Camila with that sharp, careless laugh. She's just a bitter old shrew. Thinks she still has a say in my house. Girl, please. They all laughed. I didn't. I stepped back into the kitchen, heart pounding like it was trying to escape my chest. I stood there, staring at the oven, my pan de lote slowly rising like nothing was wrong. But everything was. And in that silence, something inside me shifted. You know how people talk about a breaking point? Mine was quiet. It didn't scream or shatter dishes. It just settled. That night, I didn't eat dinner. I told them I was tired and went to my room. But I wasn't tired. I was wide awake with memory and fire. Camila had no idea the house wasn't entirely hers. I had transferred partial ownership to them years ago, yes, but I had kept some protections in place. I wasn't a fool. A clause here, a detail there. I had left enough power in my hands to pull the brakes if something ever went wrong. But I'd never imagined this. I pulled out my old lockbox from the closet and opened it on my bed. The deed. The documents. My lawyer's name. Marina Vargas. I hadn't spoken to her in nearly 5 years, but her card was still in the folder, still crisp. My hands trembled, not with fear, but with decision. That night, I called Marina. The next morning, she came to see me. We sat on the porch, like old friends, as I told her everything. The slow unraveling of respect. The loneliness in my own home. The insults. The laughter. And that one word, Shrew. Marina didn't blink. You have more control than you think, she said, flipping through the papers. You're not powerless, Estella. Let's remind them who built this house. I don't know what came over me, but I started to cry. Not little tears either. Deep, soul-draining sobs. Marina held my hand. She didn't tell me to calm down. She let me feel every inch of it. Sometimes, when people wrong you quietly, you start to believe maybe it's not so bad. Maybe you're imagining it. Maybe you are the problem. But you're not. I wasn't. I was just too patient. Too generous. Too forgiving. That was about to change. Marina told me to wait. Let me prepare everything, she said. Don't say a word yet. Not until you're ready. And I waited. I smiled at Camila. I handed her coffee in the morning. I listened as she bragged about her beautiful home to her friends over speakerphone. All the while, I knew what she didn't. That every wall she praised still had my name behind it. That the deed she waved around like a flag wasn't the final one. That the woman she called a shrew was about to own the house she bragged about. There's a strange kind of strength that comes when you stop hoping someone will treat you right, and instead, decide to treat yourself right. That's where I was. After Marina left that day, I sat quietly on the porch for hours. No knitting. No pan de elote. Just me, the creaking wooden rocker, and the wind that carried the scent of my rosemary bush. Camila and Andres had gone out that afternoon. Some garden party in the North End. Camila came downstairs in a pale yellow dress with a high slit, her hair curled perfectly. Andres followed in a blazer I'd ironed the night before, without a thank you. They didn't speak to me as they walked past. I didn't expect them to. When they left, I walked through the house. My house, with a new pair of eyes. I ran my fingers along the banister Andres once slid down as a boy. Looked up at the ceiling where Emilio had fixed that crack that never quite stopped showing. I even walked into their bedroom. Not to pry. Just to remind myself that even the most unrecognizable places were once mine. Every tile. Every nail. It's funny what people forget when the papers are signed. Marina had told me to hold off on telling them anything. Let's prepare it properly. Protect your future, not just your pride, she said. So I waited. Meanwhile, I collected details. Dates, phrases, patterns. Camila's coldness wasn't an accident. It was a campaign. Subtle. Constant. Cutting. One morning, about a week later, I sat at the table with my tea when I heard her on a video call in the living room. Honestly, if she doesn't move out soon, I'm going to lose it. Andres says we just have to wait until she, goes. She said goes like I was a plant that would just wilt if they kept the blinds shut long enough. Her friend on the screen gasped, laughing. You're so bad. No, seriously, Camila smirked. I mean, we're doing all this work renovating, and she just sits there with her weird little teacup, like a statue. Doesn't even contribute. I held my teacup a little tighter. It was the one with the tiny purple violets. A wedding gift from my cousin in Puebla. I'd kept it pristine for over 50 years. That afternoon, I packed the cup away. I didn't want it to witness any more of this. That night, Marina called. "Everything's in place," she said. "Do you want to move forward?" I didn't answer right away. Not because I had doubts, but because I knew, once I said yes, there'd be no turning back. Not to the old roles. Not to the old mother who smiled through insults. Not to the woman who traded her home for the illusion of family. "Yes," I said finally. "Let's begin." The next morning, I woke up before dawn. I hadn't slept much, but I didn't feel tired. I felt precise. Like a clock finally clicking into the right time. I wore my nicest sweater. The one Emilio always said made my eyes look fierce. I braided my thinning hair and put on earrings. Not because I needed to impress anyone, but because I wanted to walk into the moment with dignity. As myself. At 9 a.m. sharp, Marina arrived with a manila folder under her arm and fire in her step. She greeted me like a general meeting a fellow soldier. We sat together, side by side, on the couch that had once been in my formal living room, now hidden beneath Camila's velvet throw pillows. We waited. At 9:30, Andres came down yawning, scratching his chin, wearing a t-shirt that said, "Boss Mode." The irony didn't escape me. He blinked when he saw Marina. What's this?" Camila wasn't far behind. She came down in her silk robe, eyebrows already drawn in. She paused at the bottom of the stairs, assessing the situation like it was a game of chess. Marina stood. "Camila. Andres. Please, sit. We have a few matters to discuss regarding the property." Camila narrowed her eyes. "What do you mean? What matters?" Marina smiled politely, then opened the folder. "Estella has retained me to help with a legal update to the title and ownership of this home." Camila scoffed. "What? No, this house is ours. She gave it to us. It's settled." Marina nodded. "Partially. But not entirely. You see, Estella retained controlling interest through a survivorship clause. That means she has the right to revoke or restructure the ownership under specific conditions." Andres furrowed his brow. "Wait. What are you saying?" I finally spoke. "I'm saying I still own this house, Andres. And I'm taking it back." Silence. Camila's lips parted, but no words came out. Just a sound, like a breath choked mid-sentence. Marina continued. "Effective immediately, Estella will be reinstating her full ownership. You will have 30 days to vacate or renegotiate terms as tenants, subject to her discretion." "You can't do this," Camila snapped, rising to her feet. This is theft. This is manipulation." "No, querida," I said softly. "That is what you did to me. When you laughed. When you erased me from my own family. When you forgot whose hands built the walls around you." Andres looked at me, panic in his eyes. "Mamita, please, let's talk about this. You don't have to do this." I met his gaze. My son. The boy I once held when he had fevers. The man I watched slip away into silence. "I tried talking," I said. "You weren't listening. They didn't scream. They didn't beg. Not yet. They were too stunned. But I knew that part would come." Marina stood firm as she handed over the legal documents. Camila refused to touch them. Andres took them with shaking hands. We walked out of that living room together, Marina and I. Two women who understood the cost of silence and the power of voice. That night, I sat alone again, but this time in the formal dining room. I opened a bottle of red wine Emilio had saved for our anniversary. I poured one glass and raised it toward the air. "To the woman you loved," I whispered. "She's finally standing up for herself." The days that followed felt like walking through a storm that had just passed. Calm skies above, but debris still swirling at your feet. Camila didn't speak to me directly after the meeting. Not even a sideways glance. She walked through the house like it was a hotel she had overstayed in. Andres was different. Quiet. Soft around the edges. I caught him staring at me more than once, like he was trying to see the mother he remembered, but kept bumping into the woman I had become. That first week I gave them space. Not out of guilt. No, I'd buried my guilt with my silence. I gave them space because sometimes, truth needs to settle like dust. Only when it lands can you see where it all fell. One morning, I walked into the kitchen and found Camila aggressively wiping the counters, as if she could scrub her anger into the granite. She didn't look at me, but I could feel the heat radiating off her. "I hope you're happy," she muttered finally, her back to me. "I'm not," I said. "But I'm no longer ashamed either." She whirled around. "Ashamed? You've embarrassed us in front of everyone. My friends, my parents. How do you think this looks? A little old lady kicking her own family out of a house she gifted them?" "You weren't embarrassed when you called me a shrew," I said softly, "or when you spoke about me like I was a burden you were waiting to bury." Her mouth opened, but the words didn't come. Just that same gasp of disbelief I saw the day Marina walked in with the folder. "You think I don't hear things," I said. "But I do. The jokes. The sighs. The conversations you had like I was a piece of furniture instead of a person." "You were always there," she hissed. "Always watching. Breathing down my neck. Andres never had space. We never had a real marriage because of you." I stared at her, and I saw it for what it was. Not pain. Power. She wasn't hurt. She was threatened. "You had space," I said. "You had everything. I gave it to you. And still, you made me feel like less than nothing in my own home." She turned away, tossing the rag into the sink. "You'll regret this," she said under her breath. But she was wrong. I didn't regret it. The next few days passed like scenes in a slow play. Curtains drawn, characters shifting positions. I started taking walks again. I hadn't done that in years. There's a little bench at the end of the cul-de-sac with a view of the hills. Emilio and I used to sit there on Sundays and plan our future. Funny how the future always comes. Just never how you imagine. One afternoon, I ran into Mr. Salgado, our old neighbor who'd moved back in after his wife passed. He was pushing his tiny dog in a stroller, which made me smile. "Estella," he said, surprised. "I thought you moved out years ago." I chuckled. "No, senor. Just moved to the background." He looked at me kindly. "Well, it's good to see you again. The neighborhood missed you. That Camila girl never even waves." I smiled again. But inside, I felt something crackle. Even the neighbors had noticed. My absence. Her coldness. It wasn't just in my head. I wasn't losing my grip. I was finally reclaiming it. Later that week, Marina came over again. She brought more documents, but this time she also brought something else. A folder with photos, statements, copies of transfers. She slid it across the table toward me. "This," she said, "is something I think you deserve to know." I opened the folder slowly. Bank statements. Credit card charges. Large withdrawals from accounts I hadn't touched in years. Property tax notices with Andre's signature, and not always paid on time. "She's been using your home equity as a bank," Marina said gently. "They took out a line of credit against the house 2 years ago. Without notifying you. It's legal, but barely." I stared at the numbers. The flights. The luxury handbags. The spa retreats labeled as therapy. "They were living off your kindness," she continued. "And now that the well's running dry, they're angry." I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I felt light. Almost calm. "I want it reversed," I said. "Everything. It will take time. But we can freeze the access. We can block future loans. You can repossess the deed fully, with no contest if they choose to leave." And if they don't? I asked. Marina didn't blink. Then we take them to court. I nodded. Do it. That night, I cooked dinner. Not for them, for me. For the first time in a long while, I cooked something just for me. Chicken stew the way Emilio used to like it, with carrots and heavy cumin. I turned on the radio. I even hummed. Camila didn't come down. Andres did. He stood in the doorway, hesitant, like a boy again. Smells good, he said. It is, I replied, not looking up. He sat. Quiet. Then finally said, Why didn't you tell me how bad things had gotten? I looked at him, really looked at him. Would you have heard me if I had? He blinked, lowered his gaze. I don't know. I sat down across from him. I raised you better than this, Andres. I raised you to protect your family, not ignore them. You let her turn your back on me. He rubbed his temples. It all happened so slowly, mamita. I thought things were fine. Things were never fine, I said. You just stopped looking. He was quiet for a long time. Then he whispered, I'm sorry. And maybe he meant it. But sorrow without change is just another lie wrapped in guilt. So I nodded, but didn't smile. A few days later, Camila left for her mother's house. No announcement. Just a slammed door and silence. Andres said she needed space to think. Good. Let her think. I had done my thinking. Now I was doing. With Marina's help, I filed all the paperwork. I locked the accounts. I updated the deed. I changed the security system. And I told Andres he had 2 weeks. He could stay. But only if he respected my rules, my space, and my dignity. The look on his face wasn't anger. It was something heavier. Regret. That night, I took out my violet teacup again, poured a little chamomile tea and sat on the back porch. Fireflies danced in the garden I once planted with Andres as a boy. The rosemary, the lavender, the roses. They were all still there, waiting for me to come home. This time, I didn't feel like a ghost. I felt like the woman who built the house. And finally remembered how to own it. 2 weeks. That's what I gave Andres after Camila left for her mother's house. 14 days to decide whether he would remain a son or stay a stranger in my home. I didn't tell him he had to leave. I told him he had to choose. And that silence, the kind that stretches between a mother and her grown child, was louder than any fight we ever had. The first few mornings were awkward. He'd come into the kitchen and linger, maybe hoping for a warm smile, or the way I used to slide his coffee mug next to his plate without a word. But I didn't. I wasn't cruel. I just wasn't her anymore. The version of me that had bent over backwards for them no longer existed. Instead, I reclaimed my days. I began rearranging the living room, not for anyone else's comfort, but mine. I brought out Emilio's old armchair from the garage, the one Camila said was too shabby for her aesthetic. I dusted it off, scrubbed it clean, and placed it right by the window where the morning sun touches the floor just right. I reopened the sewing room Camila had turned into her closet annex, and took back my machine. The spools of thread, the buttons I'd collected over the years, all still there, untouched in their silence. Like they'd been waiting for me to come back. One afternoon, I caught myself in the mirror while adjusting the hem on a dress. The woman staring back had thinner hair and softer skin, but her eyes were sharp, awake. And beneath those dark irises was someone I hadn't seen in a very long time. Estella, the girl from Puebla who once believed she could build a world from love and wood and brick. And she had. But what no one told her was that the world she built could be taken for granted, if she let it. Around day 10, Andres knocked gently on my bedroom door. "Can we talk?" he asked. I nodded. We sat on the porch, where the air smelled of orange blossoms from the neighbor's tree. He rubbed his palms nervously, like he was holding invisible guilt between them. "I've been thinking," he said. "I'd hope so," I replied. He looked at me with those same eyes I saw when he was 5, the time he broke his father's tools trying to build a birdhouse. I let her change me, he said softly. Camila. I don't know when it started. I thought I was protecting you by keeping her happy. But I wasn't protecting anyone. I didn't interrupt. I wanted him to feel the weight of his own words. I thought giving her what she wanted would make things peaceful. But the more I gave, the smaller you became in this house. And I let it happen. I turned to him. You didn't just let it happen, Andres. You helped it happen. He lowered his head. I stopped seeing you, Mamita. The way you sat alone at dinner. The way you pretended to be okay when she mocked your hair or your clothes. I thought, I don't know, that it was harmless. But it wasn't. No, I said. It wasn't. He swallowed hard. Is there any way I can fix it? That question sat between us for a long time. You can't undo what's been done, I finally said. But you can choose differently moving forward. You can be the man I raised. Or you can go on pretending you're powerless. That's your choice. I want to stay, he said quietly. I want to earn my place here again. I didn't promise him anything. But I nodded. And for the first time in months, I saw something in my son's eyes I thought I'd lost forever. Remorse. Not pity. Not guilt. Remorse. A few days later, Camila returned. Unannounced, of course. She walked through the front door like nothing had changed, heels clicking against the floor, suitcase trailing behind her. I need my things, she said coldly. I was in the kitchen, squeezing lemons for a marinade. I didn't look up. They're in the guest room. She scoffed. Figures. She went upstairs. 20 minutes later, she came back down with a suitcase and 3 designer bags. You'll hear from my lawyer, she said without emotion. I already have one, I replied. And I'm not afraid anymore. That made her pause. She looked at me like she was seeing someone new. Or perhaps finally the woman I had always been. As she reached the door, she turned one last time. I hope this makes you feel powerful, she said. I smiled. No. It makes me feel whole. And then she was gone. The house felt different after that. Lighter. I opened the windows. Let the wind move freely through the rooms. I even turned on music while I cleaned. Old boleros that Emilio used to hum while fixing the sink. I started cooking again, not out of habit, but joy. Andres offered to help. He even brought groceries one morning and said, "Teach me how to make your chicken mole, mamita." And so I did. I don't trust easily anymore. Not even with my own son. But I give grace, because I know that people fall. And sometimes they rise again. If they want to. One night, as we ate at the small table near the window, Andres said something that stayed with me. You've changed, he said. I've returned, I corrected. He nodded. I never realized how much you gave up. Just to keep the peace. I thought peace meant silence, I said. But it doesn't. Real peace comes when you stop lying to yourself. He looked away, blinking fast. I wish Papa were here to see this. I smiled. He is. He's in every brick of this home. He'd be proud that I finally remembered who I am. And I meant it. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was just existing in a place I once built. I was living in it again, breathing in the life I had carved from nothing. I wasn't the shrew. I was the soul of this house. And I had come back to stay. A week after Camila walked out of my house, and my life, I found something I hadn't meant to stumble upon. I was in the storage closet upstairs, organizing the last of what she'd left behind. Most of it was glittering clutter. Sequined shoes, high-end makeup, receipts from boutiques with more attitude than soul. But then, beneath a velvet pouch of fake pearls and a broken silver hair clip, I found it. A lace-covered box. Pale ivory, with little gold embroidery at the corners. It looked almost delicate, like something from another era. Curious, I opened it. Inside were letters. Dozens of them. Some typed, some handwritten. And one, at the very bottom, addressed to Andres. In Camila's handwriting. I recognized the way her A always tilted like it was trying too hard to stand straight. I hesitated. I shouldn't read it. It wasn't mine. But neither was the judgment she passed on me. The ridicule. The betrayal. So I unfolded the letter. It was dated a few weeks before the confrontation in the living room. Before Marina came. Before Camila left. And it was ugly. Andres, if she doesn't die soon, we're never getting this house. The old hag clings to it like it's some sacred temple. I don't care how you do it. Either convince her to move to a nursing home, or start pressuring her. We can't keep playing house in her shadow. I want this place fully ours. I've waited long enough. Do something. Or I will. No signature. Just that chilling demand. I sat there for a long time, the box in my lap, my fingers trembling not from surprise, but from the slow confirmation of everything I already knew. She didn't just dislike me. She wanted me gone. Dead if it made things easier. That letter, though venomous, was a gift. A final page in the chapter 1 needed to close. I put it back in the envelope and tucked it into my own file folder. The one Marina helped me prepare. It would never leave my possession again. I didn't tell Andres about the letter. Not right away. I needed to see him. Not the man molded by Camila's ambition, but the boy who once brought me sunflowers from the school garden, worried I had a sad day. So I waited. And watched. In the days that followed, Andres kept trying. He cleaned. He cooked. Well, tried to. He helped replant the backyard garden where Camila had once paved over my roses for a marble patio. He didn't complain. He didn't sulk. But was it guilt? Or real change? One morning, I decided to test him. I need your help, I said over breakfast. With the finances. He looked up, surprised. Sure. Of course. I handed him a box of papers. Account ledgers, receipts, the remaining balance from the joint loan they had taken out without telling me. Tell me the damage, I said. All of it. I want to see it with my own eyes. He took a deep breath and nodded. That afternoon, he sat across from me with a yellow legal pad. The line of credit is almost maxed. She was taking out cash. Lots of it. I didn't know how bad it got. She didn't do it alone, I said gently. No, he admitted. I signed. I let her. I watched his hands shake slightly. Not from fear but from shame. I want to pay you back, he said. Bit by bit. I don't expect forgiveness, mamita. But I want to do the right thing. I nodded slowly. Then let's start by cutting the ties that are still bleeding. We closed the joint account that day. Cancelled any card with my name on it. Marina came by and notarized new legal clauses. Andres could remain in the house, but only as a resident, not an owner. He accepted without argument. That night, I sat with my cup of tea on the front porch, watching the sun dip beneath the hills. Andres came out and sat beside me, 2 steaming mugs in his hands. Chamomile, he said. I made it like you used to. With honey and cinnamon. I took the cup, smiled, and sipped. Then I reached into my shawl pocket and handed him the letter. He read it. And for the first time in months, I saw tears in his eyes. I didn't know, he whispered. I swear. I didn't know she hated you like this. She didn't just hate me, I said. She resented what I built. Because she couldn't build anything of her own. Andres folded the letter carefully and handed it back. What do I do now, he asked. You live better, I said. You stop shrinking to please people who hurt others. And you remember the woman who raised you to be more than someone else's pawn. He nodded. Said nothing more. But in his silence, I felt a shift. Not redemption, but the first step toward it. A few days later, Marina called with news. Camila tried to file a claim on the house, she said. But with the letter and all the new legal work, she doesn't have a case. We're clean. I didn't cheer. I didn't gloat. I just felt still. That night, I went into my sewing room and pulled out an old photo. Emilio, Andres, and I, on the day we moved into this house, 35 years ago. Andres had missing teeth. Emilio was sunburned from installing the mailbox. And I was holding a ceramic vase full of daisies, smiling like the world was ours. And it had been. And it was again. Sometimes I walk through the rooms and speak to the walls. I tell them I'm back. I apologize for abandoning them to cold hands and sharper tongues. I ask their forgiveness. And I forgive myself. The woman Camila called a shrew? She's the woman who built a home, held a family, made sacrifices no one noticed. And when the time came, she rose, not with rage, but with clarity. I am that woman. And now, I own not just the house Camila bragged about, but my voice. And my worth. Spring arrived slowly that year, as if the earth itself was cautious about starting over. But little by little, green returned. The frost faded from the tips of the rosemary. The bougainvillea near the fence started to bloom again, climbing its way upward like a woman who refused to stay low. So did I. For the first time in years, I began to live in my home, not merely exist within it. I opened the curtains every morning. I lit candles in the evening, not for guests, but for myself. I brought back my old prayer rug, the one Camila called tacky, and placed it near the window where the light hits just right during golden hour. Andres continued to help. He wasn't perfect. Sometimes he'd fall quiet when we talked about Camila, as if haunted by how much he'd let go unnoticed. But he tried. He asked questions now. He didn't shrink from the truth anymore. He even enrolled in an evening class in bookkeeping to finally understand money the right way, as he put it. I saw glimpses of my boy again. Not the man shaped by fear and silence, but the child who used to build blanket forts in the living room and beg me to leave them up overnight. We found a rhythm. A routine that respected boundaries but still carried warmth. We didn't speak much about the past, not because it didn't matter, but because it was no longer in control. One Saturday morning, I asked him to help me plant new jasmine by the front gate. He smiled. Like we used to? I nodded. Exactly. As we worked, side by side with dirt beneath our nails, I thought of all the things Camila never understood. She valued shine over soil, surface over substance. She wanted a house to brag about, not a home to nurture. She never once tended to the garden. Later that afternoon, while resting on the porch, I received a letter in the mail. No return address. Just my name in handwriting I knew far too well. Camila. I hesitated. Then opened it. Estella, I know you hate me. I probably deserve it. I never understood you. Maybe I never even tried. But I wanted what I thought I was owed, and I stepped over you to get it. Now I see it. Not because you screamed, but because you didn't. I'm staying with my mother. She says you were right. That I've always looked for shortcuts to a crown I didn't earn. She used those words. A crown I didn't earn. Don't worry. I won't come back. Not to the house. Not to Andres. I think I broke something in him I can't fix. But I hope one day when you sip your tea, you think of me. Not as the girl who mocked you, but as the woman who finally understood why you fought back. Camila, I folded the letter and placed it in my sewing box. Not as a keepsake, but as a reminder. Sometimes, the ones who hurt you will never say, I'm sorry. And when they do, it doesn't erase what they've done. But it can mark the end of their power over you. And that's enough. A few days later, Marina stopped by. She hugged me tightly and handed me a small wrapped gift. From me to you, she smiled. I opened it to find a brass nameplate. It read, Casa de Estella. My eyes filled with tears. I traced the letters with my fingertip. Put it wherever you want, she said. But don't ever forget. It's yours. We affixed it to the fence, right where the sun hits in the morning. Casa de Estella. It shone like a badge of survival, of resilience, of reclaiming what was never lost, only buried. That evening, I brewed a pot of chamomile tea and brought out 2 cups. One for me, one for Emilio. I placed his beside the photo of us on the mantel. The one where I'm wearing that pale blue dress he said made me look like spring itself. I did it, I whispered. I stood up. I came back. The wind outside rustled the trees. Jasmine floated through the open window. And for the first time since the storm of betrayal began, I felt peace. Not because they were gone, but because I had stayed. The next morning, I opened the front door and saw a little girl, no older than 10, peeking through the garden gate. Hi, she said shyly. My name's Lily. I like your flowers. I smiled. Would you like to plant some with me next weekend? Her eyes lit up. Really? Yes, really. Bring a small shovel. And gloves. She beamed, then ran off down the street. As I turned back inside, I looked once more at the living room Camila had once tried to redecorate into someone else's dream. Now it held Emilio's chair, my mother's rug, a table Andres built with his own hands. It was mine again. Home again. And when I looked in the mirror that night, I no longer saw the shrew Camila had mocked. I saw the woman who owned the house she bragged about. The seasons turned quietly that year. Summer drifted in with its long evenings and gentle warmth. The garden bloomed fuller than it had in decades. White jasmine, pink roses, golden marigolds Emilio used to love. I sat out on the porch most evenings with my tea and my memories, watching the light stretch lazily across the yard like an old friend returning home. Andres settled into his new rhythm. He found a part-time job with a local accounting firm. Nothing fancy, but honest work. He was proud of it. Proud in the quiet way a man is when he knows he's beginning again, not from scratch, but from truth. He began going to therapy. Not because I told him to, but because one day after dinner he looked up and said, I think I need help understanding why I let her do so much damage, for so long. I simply nodded. That was enough. Some nights he would sit with me in the living room, watching telenovelas like we used to, both of us chuckling at the melodrama. Other nights he kept to himself, reading, journaling. Healing doesn't look the same for everyone. And I no longer demanded it look any certain way. I had learned that loving someone doesn't mean losing yourself for them. I didn't need him to be the son I remembered. I needed to be the woman I had forgotten. And I was. One Sunday Lily, the sweet girl from the neighborhood, came by with a bundle of wildflowers in her hands. She'd been helping me in the garden for nearly 2 months by then. Always asking questions, always eager to learn. This is for you, she said, holding out the flowers wrapped in twine. For teaching me how to make something grow. I smiled. Thank you, Corazon. You remind me of my abuela, she added. Except you laugh more. I laughed then, right on cue. That's because I'm finally allowed to. There were moments, quiet ones, when the past would try to sneak back in. I'd find an old scarf Camila had left behind in a drawer, or hear a song she used to play on the stereo. But those moments no longer hurt the way they used to. They were just echoes. Shadows. Gentle reminders of how far I'd come. One day, Marina came to visit. We sat in the garden, sipping hibiscus tea beneath the olive tree Emilio and I had planted on our 10th anniversary. You've done more than reclaim your home, she said. You reclaimed your identity. I nodded. I was afraid I'd lost it. You didn't lose it, she said. You just buried it under sacrifice. She was right. We women, especially mothers, are taught that love means giving everything. Our time. Our bodies. Our peace. Our homes. And somewhere along the way, we start to believe that receiving less is noble. That being invisible is the price of being kind. But I had learned the truth the hard way. Kindness without boundaries is just a slow erasure. And I was done disappearing. A month later, I got an envelope in the mail. This time, it wasn't from Camila. It was from her lawyer. Inside was a legal statement. She had officially withdrawn any claim to the property. No more contest. No more appeals. Just one final sentence scribbled in her handwriting on the back of the document. She won. Fair and square. I folded the paper carefully and placed it in the same file where I had tucked away the venomous letter she once wrote to Andres. This time, not as evidence of pain, but as a full stop at the end of a chapter one no longer needed to reread. We had a family dinner soon after that. Just me, Andres, and a few neighbors who had become like kin. I cooked mole and arroz con leche. Lily helped make the tortillas, her hands still clumsy but full of joy. When we sat down, Andres raised his glass and cleared his throat. I just want to say thank you, mamita, for fighting for yourself, for not letting me stay asleep, for teaching me what strength really looks like. I didn't cry. Not then. But later, when the dishes were washed and the laughter had faded into soft silence, I stood in the center of my living room and felt it. Not sadness. Not regret. But something richer. Wholeness. This house, my house, still has cracks in the floor, little stains on the countertops, and a roof that complains every time it rains. But it's mine. And more than that, it's me. Not a trophy. Not a stage. A home. Built with love. Protected by truth. And held up by a woman who finally remembered her worth. So if anyone asks who owns the house Camila used to brag about, tell them the truth. The Shrew does. And she's never giving it up again.